differences in a herd of cattle can uptake that. I mean, we just cover that by ruthless culling over long term.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I just suspect, you see, it's very hereditary, and I just suspect that perhaps some cattle, like people, don't uptake particularly minerals in the same fashion, one to another.
Look, you're definitely going to get some variation within a herd for a lot of different reasons. Around some are better performers, some have stronger immune systems. One thing I would look at is just check that that animal is well grown. You know, and for her, if you can trace back and sort of make sure that she's of the right mature weight, you know, that you're not having any sort of, you know, heavy calf, like big calf birth weight that's causing the issue. You know, she's got enough. I had an interesting one with a stud where pelvic diameter was an issue with one particular bull because we were having a lot of issues with that. So whether that's the issue. And then again, I always like to look at the pasture, because when you talk about calcium, a lot of it's DCAD. So, you know, dietary cation anion balance. You know, yes, they have a really high level for calcium, blood calcium at that point, but if you're not setting them up on the right diet to mobilise that calcium, yes, you've highlighted you're only getting specific animals, but is there a production gain to be made by supplementing at that point, because it does switch on milk production and negates stress as well if they're calving quicker and easier, which is directly linked to fertility. So I suppose I'd be looking at those individual animals and seeing if they're, you know, was that calf heavier, is she physically mature enough, her pelvic diameter, and then going, okay, should I look at using a supplement and measuring and seeing if there's a production gain? Because in my experience, if they calve quicker and they milk better and they cycle quicker. So I suppose, yeah, that would be how I'd be, sorry. Yeah, that's how I would sort of address that one. But I do see variability with everything. It's just, you know, your clinical issues to me are a red flag that we're losing production in the rest of them.
Your points on feed quality, and sometimes, you know, you gave the example of some maybe weaners going into a paddock and exhibiting some subclinical signs of things. So when that happens, what's the quickest way to understand what's going on with them and being able to solve the issue for them?
Yeah, sure. I suppose I'd be talking with your advisor, you know, because if it's a plant at a certain growth stage, you know, talking through, even getting someone on farm, you know, I'm able to come out and do a nitrate test like these guys are as well, just to see, you know, often when it's green feed early on, you know, that seems to be one of the highlighting or the initial factors I'm seeing as the cause of the problem. But just, you know, gathering that information and speaking with someone, you know, if it's early growth and green feed, and then just checking your vaccination history, you know, the weight and maturity of the animal, the transition, and then someone can talk you through, you know, what the issue might be. Absolutely. And it's well worth, if you're seeing the odd animal with an issue, you know, it's that whole tip of the iceberg. You know, you talk about production, you want to be picking up on those issues to make sure you're not losing more production of the rest of the animals. Yeah.
I'm a big believer in that situation with treatment trials, like on farm. So if you've got, for example, if it's green feed scours, take 10 animals and do a diagnostic drench, rule out that it's not worms. Take 10 animals, feed them something else and see if, you know, some hay. I don't know, I think there's some value in simple steps like that as well. Just a thought.
Yeah, and, you know, testing, I completely agree, but we have good testing facilities now to test if it is worms, you know, as well. You can sort of start to think, okay, you can identify the issue with testing and then do the trial with different supplements, or, you know, with or without, to start to work out. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, look, just a comment. I mean, the big challenge with these interruptions when cattle go on a new feed is that by the time you've got your diagnosis, that the change has passed and you're already through it. So I think a lot of it's really about understanding the fact that any change in the rumen is incredibly disruptive, and the rumen can adapt to pretty high levels of nitrate if it's given an opportunity to do so. Okay, so the two key issues that you'll see when you go onto really fresh grass is you're either going to have some issues with subclinical nitrates, or you're going to have issues with just a complete change in the stuff going into the rumen, and that basically screwing up the bacteria that's in there and wiping a lot of it out, and the rumen not coping with that change in feed or change substrate. So I guess it comes back a lot to what Nikki was saying earlier. You know, I think we can anticipate a lot of this stuff happening, and a lot of it's about steady transitions when we go to new feeds. Okay, and we're always going to, or we're regularly going to be confronted with a flush of new feed or a change in pasture. You know, when we see catastrophic losses, it's when animals are put onto something their gut isn't used to very quickly without any choice. So I think if we go to a situation of going to a new feed or a lush feed, a couple of really important things. You know, don't put them in there at 6 o'clock at night and come back the next day expecting everything to be all right, because that's when you're going to have half of them dead if there really is a problem. If you've got a new feed, restrict access for the first 24 hours, okay? Go in there, put them in there in the morning, come back a couple of hours later, have a look, because most of the things that are really going to wipe animals out are going to wipe them out quickly. But if they are getting crook, if they are getting a bellyache, if they are getting bloat, you can move them back off that pasture. Other things to think about is making sure they're actually full before they go into new paddocks, all right? If you put hungry animals into paddocks that they're not used to, they're going to gorge. And gorging is going to be a major issue with major disruption as well. So just, you know, making sure if you've got some hay or some other forage available, fill them up with that first, put them in for a couple of hours, pull them out, maybe a bit later, you know, if you're worried about that pasture being a bit hot. A lot of the problems we see, we think are going to be fixed with minerals, and that can be helped, but I think we spend a lot of money on minerals where actually a little bit more effective fibre is probably going to do a better job. And slowing that gut down, so the minerals that they're getting from the grass or other sources have got much better chance of being absorbed, can be a very important process. So if, again, you're going on to very lush feeds, the answer is probably not a bucket of stuff. The answer is probably a couple of bales of hay in the corner that are palatable, that slows the rumen down. Now, the bucket of stuff can be really useful, and we've got really hot hot potassium pastures that can certainly impact things like grass tetany. But just as important of having some magnesium or calcium available, it's slowing the rumen down with a bit more fibre. We can spend a lot of money that takes out half the profit of cattle on intensive grass, all right, in mineral supplements, where really what we probably need to do a lot of the time is just slow the rumen down, have a little bit of stuff there if it's required, okay, because a lot of it is more about really rapid flow rates and things not getting absorbed rather than, you know, a magic ingredient that's missing. That's just... If I'm on really lush feed at the front end, I'd always have some hay available that the cattle can potentially come out and browse and graze. Okay, if it's really lush hot oats, for example, going in. If I'm going on to graze it for the first time, if you've got the ability, and it comes back to having the ability and the resources to do it, you know, fill them up with a few bales of hay before you put them in there the day before, and go down half an hour later to see if anyone's looking like they've got a bellyache. All right? Okay, so any major change in rumen takes probably 2 weeks to fully adapt to a new feed, all right? But, you know, we can get some reasonable adaptation, you know, over 7 days of being a bit more conservative. You know, major things are going to go wrong. They're probably going to go wrong. I won't say always. They'll probably go wrong in the first 3 to 4 days, okay? And probably within the first 24 hours when we go onto a new feed. So again, it's a lot of observation. It's not just opening the gate and saying, thank God we've got some grass again. Okay, it's just that cautionary principle of when you go onto new feed. If you've got a couple of cows, those flighty heifers that you don't like and you're happy to see up a truck anyway, maybe put them in for a day or two first to see if they get bowled over. You know, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of a test graze when we go into the situations, you know. So, you know, I think there's some stuff in there in that management space that we can look at that really helps in this adaptation, because the rumen, it's a sensitive critter.